There's somebody from the community who was at that meeting who may remember my saying that. I said, the switchboard will have blood on its hands. And my motion was defeated 27-7. What could you do? Shocking. Shocking. Well, the same debate raged in San Francisco about the closing of the banks. The Democratic Convention was to be held in 1984. And the Harvey Milk Club, to its credit, gay club, gay and lesbian club, political correctness, that's what is doing a lot of damage to ACT UP, or was doing a lot of damage to ACT UP, political correctness. Came out in support of urging the Health Commissioner, Silverman, who became head of the AIDS Foundation, American Foundation for AIDS Research. He was urged to close the bans because many thousands of people are coming in from all over the country, from Middle America. Here's their chance. These bisexuals and homosexuals who don't know. 1984. And the bans weren't closed. That's my best recollection. Then the controversy about the closing of the bans in New York. When that happened and Koch closed them, though 3 remained open. 3 remained open throughout, despite all the publicity. My attitude then changed. Leave the bans open. It was now 1987, 1988, probably 87. Leave the bans open and have them be a center of dissemination of information. Now we know so much about the epidemic. Anyway, what a tirade. And I have a lot of anger about it. I have a lot of anger toward the gay community for their ostrich-like position, and yet they were human beings. I have a lot of admiration for Larry Kramer. He was fighting. He organized the very first AIDS group to collect money at the dock at Fire Island at the Pines. I believe it was July 4th weekend of 1981. The first report came from the CDC in June 1981. And then there was the Lawrence Altman article on December 3rd, 1981 in the New York Times, which spoke about men who have sex with 9-10 men in advance coming down with, it was either the pneumonia or the cancer, or both, I forget. I have a lot of anger. I didn't know. I was operating alone. There were no connections. I wish that I had a connection. I remember reading in The Native that Larry Kramer was holding a fundraiser in his apartment in August to support the work of the Dr. Friedman Keene at NYU. He was a dermatologist who was one of the first to speak about the implications of this disease. And I sent him a check that was so embarrassingly small. I'm not going to say what it was on this camera. I can't believe that I'll say it. That the truth be told, I didn't go to his apartment for the fundraiser. I wrote out one check, I tore it up. I can't believe that I was so goddamn cheap. I sent him a check, 1981 in August, of $5. I can't believe that's what I sent. I sent something. And then I made up for it within a couple of months when there was a special collection for Friedman Keene's work. If I'm getting his name right. It's still around. I sent you $25, but then I continued to send money. I do have a lot of anger as to how the epidemic was handled. I was writing my letters not so much about the epidemic. I was actually writing my letters to Abe Rosenthal and to Sulzberger Sr., editor, managing editor, and publisher. Never once getting an acknowledgement. My letters were about their handling of gay issues. My letters were about their failure to use the word gay except in quotations or in the name systems of organization. And that policy changed when Max Frankel replaced Abe Rosenthal. And now the New York Times may be the most positive, gay-friendly newspaper in the country. I don't read all the newspapers. Right? It's very sad that an epidemic that might have been handled early on wasn't handled because the news media failed to give it attention. I think very, very early on, Geraldo Rivera and what's his name? Channel NBC talk show host, Phil Donahue, both gave attention to the disease in 1-hour segments. And there was a demonstration, silent demonstration in Central Park. I believe it was the summer of 1983. Geraldo Rivera was there. Each were given a number. How many people either had AIDS, how many people had died of AIDS, and it was in the 500s. Anyway, that's that story about me and ACT UP. But I'd like to continue. I'm talking. I'd like to continue and finish the story of a pattern. You mentioned character traits or emotional patterns. Well, I was among those who wanted ACT UP to stay pure, to stay focused and stay focused on the epidemic and stay nonpartisan. There was a significant group within ACT UP that wanted us to align with the left in America, with left organizations, the weak and the powerless, and join their demonstrations, endorse their marches, and have them endorse our marches. A left which wasn't able to get anywhere, taking the focus away from our main concern, and it really caused a division within the organization. And it came to a head in the spring of 1988 when there was a peace march on the United Nations. I don't recall what the peace march was all about. It was a march for peace. And the proposal on the floor was that we endorse this march. The march was a collection of left-wing organizations, many of which I supported. I mean, I voted for Jesse Jackson in the Democratic primary. Nevertheless, I wanted ACT UP to remain nonpartisan. And that was one of the last times I spoke at an ACT UP meeting. And those who agreed, with whom I agreed, lost by a 60-40 margin. And I stayed in ACT UP into 1991. I became a very, very good friend of a man who was one of the unsung heroes of ACT UP. He never sought publicity. He was one of the 5 people arrested on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. He never got the acclaim that he deserved. Most people don't know the name Lee Arsenault. The first year of our friendship was wonderful. He had a lover. He lived deep in Long Island. He'd come in, we'd meet for dinner every Monday night before an ACT UP meeting. The second year, so-so. Well, gee whiz, I have this commitment every Monday night. He needs me. He has AIDS. His condition is deteriorating. He's a hero. I can't abandon him. And he would give me dish. He was on the inside. He would give me dish. He knew the big people, though he was never a big person himself in terms of name recognition. Though those who knew, who did the work, knew that Lee Arsenault did the work. And Peter Staley knew the work that Lee Arsenault did. And I have a lot of respect for Peter Staley, as well as having a crush on him. As did a lot of other people. And Peter and I generally agreed about issues, though I was not a personal friend of Peter's. Anyway, with Lee, the third year it became tyranny. Oh God, I don't want to go to the meeting tonight. Monday night. It came to a point where during the year I would speak with him or his lover, and when his lover would say to me, Lee's too ill to come in Monday, I would be relieved. I would call, maybe I shouldn't have used his name. I would call a time when, and I would hope, I would want to hear Lee's not coming in, and I would liberate and I wouldn't have to go to the meeting. And the final liberation happened when Lee died in June of 1991. And then I stopped attending ACT UP meetings. A month earlier I had started attending meetings of Codependence Anonymous when a friendship I had dramatically changed. And I've been attending 12-step meetings since, and finding them to be tremendously rewarding, and a great gift I've given myself in my active participation. Lee Arsenault was a hero. True hero of the epidemic.
So what have you learned since 1991? About people, about yourself?
This is a powerful question. Not easily answered. I can give the results, which are ongoing, and always transforming. Getting richer, or becoming less important. I am much more at peace with myself. I'm increasingly aware that I'm not a bad person. The idea of accepting one's dark side and acknowledging that the dualities, that I'm powerless over my dark side, and that only a power greater than myself could restore my sanity, which is the second step. And fortunately, the program allows participants to define a higher power, God, for themselves. When my life was going well, it was easier for me to acknowledge a spiritual, traditional God, though never in the form that organized religions used. And I frequently would say, in regard to my life, a miracle is something that happens only with God's intervention. And I'll say that now, a miracle happens only with God's intervention. And for me, God is the program, the collective wisdom of the program, the collected accumulated wisdom of the program. My teachers are other codependents. My teachers are other sex addicts. SCA has been my dominant program for over 2.5 years. Well, I've maintained my connection with CODA, a meeting a week, and I do an ACOA meeting